Welcome back to another episode of Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times. That intro, if I just don't think, it comes out because it's so deeply ingrained in my psyche. I could probably recite that intro while I sleep, but if I think about it, I don't know how to say it, or I mess it up somehow. Just like when you're trying to teach somebody how to tie shoes like a little kid, for instance, your son or daughter, it's really hard to remember how to tie up your shoelaces. It's easy to do if you don't think about it. Anyway, that's an esoteric problem I'll address on my own. Today's episode is all about the core program. We're going to unpack how it originated, what purpose does it serve, what problems does it solve, and the future of said program. This is something that has emerged into our world and into the world without our doing. It just happened. It's how God works, right? Speaking through somebody who really has a passion, and then we just help to nurture that passion. And we get into the person who God spoke to and said, make this happen, or however God speaks, and as well as the team that's putting it on. So it's a really cool episode. Please, if you're a parent, listen to this. Please, if you're single, listen to this. There's so much very, very important information here. So let's get into it. We have an all-star cast. On my screen, actually, this looks kind of like a superhero story. We have the token lady.
Yeah.
This is going to be good. So, everybody, we're going to be unpacking this core program because it's something that kind of emerged out of nowhere. Kind of like I don't have a good metaphor, but it feels like a superhero story where something's born out of the universe. The universe gives birth to something and it just shoots out and starts living life at an accelerated rate. That's what I see core as. Something that didn't exist and then it started existing and then now it's just really doing great. So want to understand this thing. What is this thing? But first, we want to figure out who's here to have this conversation. So one at a time. I know David Hewish, but what I don't know, David Hewish, is if you have a middle name. So do you want to say hi and then do a big reveal of a middle name? Do you have a middle name?
Yes, hello Andrew. I do actually. So it's David Timothy Jinsung, Korean name, Hewish.
Just wedged in there, just wedged a little bit of Korean.
Yeah.
Do you ever get a bit of like an eyebrow raise from police or security, like, or border control when you come back into the country, when they're just like, checks out, wait a second, checks out? It's like this, a little bit of Korean mixed in with a whole lot of English.
That only happened in Korea. There's this young receptionist and she was like, wait, you have a Korean name? That's crazy.
Yeah.
So
This
funny.
tall white guy, yeah.
I guess the easiest answer at this point, because before, Korea is unknown. So they would see that. They're like, what is happening? I'm having an out-of-body experience. Now it's just, you could just say, my parents are really into K-pop. End of story. They won't ask any more questions. They'll just be like, yeah, checks out.
Yeah. That's the reality now, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. So welcome, David Hewish. Araceli, do you have many middle names like some people in Latin America?
No, just one. I mean, apart from my first name, just one middle name. My full name is Araceli Isabel Melgarejo, and I recently added my mom's last name.
Wait,
Actually,
what?
I
I did not think your sentence was gonna end there because you just got blessed. So I thought
Yes,
clearly
I
she
know.
added her husband's, but then you're like my mom's.
I
I'm like,
mean,
wait,
not legally. Legally, I haven't added anything yet, so I still have my mom and my dad's last name. And it was very recent because it was always my whole life only my dad's last name, and I have my mom's.
where
But
before or after your dad's?
after,
That's a new last name. An after
Mhm.
last name is a new last
Mhm.
name.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So you
yeah,
just changed your last name.
yeah,
That was a
yeah. That
roundabout way
was.
of just saying that you've changed your heritage.
Um, well, that was my mom trying to. She pushed for her ancestry getting represented in my last name.
Mm,
Yeah.
wow.
Hmm.
Feminism. I like it.
Yeah.
And but did you inherit your husband's last name too, or is that a work in progress, or what's up with that?
That's a work in progress.
Okay.
Yeah, we're
That's
still
a
on it.
very in our movement it's very touch and go because there's like the blessing which doesn't require any of that because it's not legally
Mm,
binding, it's spiritually binding. But
yeah.
then a few years later, especially when kids are like blessed and in college and people are like, so wait, are you dating this person? Like, well, kind of married. Or like, kind of married. What? Do you have
Yeah.
their last name? It's like, so I don't know. They just, can we just stop talking about it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So work in progress. You
Hmm.
got blessed. Change your last name, not to your husband's last name, but to your mom's name. It's like a cliffhanger of a story, and there'll be
Yeah.
a sequel. Maybe
There
on the
will be a
next
sequel.
podcast you can let us know. You can just update us what your new last name is if it changes.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, definitely.
And then Andy Pock, have you changed your last name to Karen's last name at all? Is that the trend? Is that what's going on?
It
Do
was
you have
the discussion was whether we want to have Pak Ishiguro as our last name with a hyphen or without a hyphen. But
Hmm.
she didn't like any of those versions. Too long and too weird. Ishiguro.
Okay.
So she gave up on Ishiguro. So
Mhm.
I have
Oh.
an official Korean name, but it's not on my passport. On my passport, I'm just Andreas Park.
No middle name.
No middle name.
And then, but secretly, every once in a while your dad winks at you, and then you know that he's acknowledging this invisible middle name that you may or may not have.
Yeah, because I got it later, like when I was 2 or something. Korean name.
What is happening here? This is a middle name extravaganza that I did not expect. So please tell me, how is it that your parents like forgot? Is it like they failed the test of naming their kid and then they're like, oh yeah, crap.
Well, with Korean names, I think most of the time it was, or at least in our case, it was a Korean leader, like a church leader, who
Okay.
gave it the name. And he was visiting. I don't know. I don't know if he was there when I was born, but he happened to visit when I was 2. And
Okay.
that's when I got the name, and it was based on my last name. 'Cause
Uh-huh.
it's pronounced Pongmoon, but you write it Pokmoon, so it's Pokmoon Pok. So,
Huh.
and all of my siblings have a Pok first syllable for the Korean name.
Mm.
That's either extremely audacious or really cool. I can't figure out. Because Jesus did the same thing and he's like, hey, Simon, that's not your name, buddy. Your name is Peter. And he's like, yeah, I guess my name is Peter, right? And then True Father kind of continued that tradition. And then a lot of people followed in his tradition. Be like, well, if he does it, then I'll just start naming kids after they're already 2 years old, apparently, after they're already named. I like it. So anyway, we'll leave it up to you. You can comment below whether you think that's wildly cool or just wild. But I like how it's unofficially official. Okay, so wow, that was a journey I did not expect. And now we know these characters a little bit better. We want to talk about, first of all, what is this thing that you guys created? I guess I'll throw it to you, David, because that's kind of where the origin story originates. Is you just started? I remember getting an email from you. It was like, "Hey, I really love this book. We should do more with it." And then we were all like, "Yeah, great." I had ideas, apparently rejected. I don't know. My ideas were very different, but you took it on a different path. So give us a little bit about like why you thought it was so important and how this thing was birthed, this core program.
Yeah, for sure. I think the context was I had just come off a UK high noon workshop that you guys had all come to, and so I was already kind of feeling the spiritual high you get after a high noon workshop, at least when you participate fully and you open up your shadows and you receive God's grace and light. So I was definitely in that state, and that only continued when I was reading the Core of the Universe book. And as a 17-year-old as I was at the time, really thinking very seriously about the blessing. It was like, whoa, the content in this book is so important. I love this, right? So when I emailed you guys, the only intention I had was just to propose the idea, could you organize like a Hundake group? I would love that. Um, so obviously you guys took that very seriously and you debated whether you should make a program out of that. It was in the end Benji who approached me and was like, we have this idea. We're going to propose this idea to create this marriage preparation program. And I really felt at the time that, yeah, that's really right. That's what people need. I was looking around, I was asking myself, why do people leave the church? Why is the blessing so hard for some people? What are people not getting? And I really felt like what the Core of the Universe as a book offers is just the sheer truth of what is the blessing about? What's God's purpose for marriage, for sexuality, for intimacy? Um, and it just, yeah, it really showed it in a very clear way that to me felt so true. And I was like, surely everyone deserves to hear this, right? So that's really the inspiration behind the program, was to inform people like this is what the blessing means. You should learn from this, and that's only continued as like the driving force for this program.
Well, help me understand this, because I was trying to explain this yesterday actually, I think, to a BFD leader in an Asian country. Because they're like, yeah, no, we already have blessing workshops, and I was like, yeah, but this is different, right? So what you just said is, it's really clarifying what the blessing is, but people are already going to the blessing workshop. So what's the difference? Like, what would they be getting in reading Core of the Universe or in this core program that they wouldn't be getting, say, anywhere else? And this is not to say that we're better than anybody else, but what you're saying is that there is a difference, and I'm just trying to understand what that is.
I think one of the main differences is we're with people for a longer space of time. Normally a BFT blessing workshop is just one weekend where, sure, you learn a lot, and BFT have so much they can offer, and they actually help people to get blessed. We're not doing that. We're not, matching people. But what we're providing is really a community that people can join. We have this group chat element to the program where every participant is all in one group chat, brothers and sisters, and we just discuss different questions about the content throughout the program. And that's a really bonding experience for everybody. The brothers find out more about how sisters think about the blessing and vice versa, right? And it's been a really revolutionary experience to have that community aspect. But for the solid 2 months that we're together for the program, it really feels like we're all a family who want to pursue the same thing, the blessing. We're really present in people's lives, with mentoring. We really know the young people's hearts and what is really going on in their lives in a very intimate way. And that extends to the group scenario, and just the whole way the program is formatted is for this community to thrive of singles preparing together.
I would add one thing here. That one difference in the program, because we maybe have the same content, right? It's true parents' words on the blessing and the meaning of the blessing. But I feel like in the program, it's made more practical. How can you apply these words to your life, to creating a vision for yourself that you are actually taking steps to making it real? And I think that's also one thing that people get by practicing everything throughout 2 months, in the group discussions, in their small group, in the webinars, being able to ask questions to the staff, having optional mentoring, if they need more support, if they have, other questions. And also, as you mentioned, in the group discussion, they get challenged by questions around, the blessing, marriage, and those everyone gets to learn from each other. And yeah, I feel like it just makes it more practical, more real, because sometimes the blessing and the vision for the blessing can be a very abstract concept that it's up in the clouds, and it's kind of hard to relate to it, connect with it. And so I feel like what we are doing in the way that we're doing it is being able to connect with the purpose of the blessing in the day to day, in my habits, in my life
We got to
for
unpack
everyone.
that. Because here's the thing is when we started High Noon, there was a very strong resistance to the notion that anybody could start an organization about sex that's not going to just destroy everybody's life, because it's clearly like a very powerful force, and it's very easy to spin out of control and go into some dangerous territory. And eventually people relented when they discovered that there's a problem. So, okay, there's a porn problem. So you can talk to those people because they're already broken. This is like a feeling that we got. I'm not kind of paraphrasing a sentiment that we got, which is like, well, okay, well, those people, they're already, really struggling. So you can talk to them about sex, right? But there are these people over here who are these fluffy, pure white bunnies that if you mention the word sex, they could die, right? Or they could be triggered and then go down this path of just becoming prostitutes. I don't even know what like the logic behind it is, but it's just like,
Yeah.
do not let them be aware that there's something known as sex, because it's a dangerous world, and don't let them know about this dangerous world, right? And so core is different because it's actually educating about sex to people who might not be struggling with pornography, right? It's different from Ascend. So how is it that you are practicing, getting prepared for the blessing? Araceli, you're talking about day to day, but in a way that I think it's a really hard concept for people to understand, that this is ultimately a program about sexuality for people who are not having sex, and it's not triggering, and it doesn't lead them to sex. It actually helps them to. But how does that work? And what are you guys practically doing to avoid disaster? Because again, from some people's perspectives, and rightfully so, like a concerned citizen, they're like, wait, so let me get this straight. You guys are talking about sex together, and you're doing it somehow in groups where you're having discussions with boys and girls in the same group, and it's not just like turning into a bunch of pregnancy everywhere, like total and utter disaster. Like, how is it that you guys are managing this? It's a really important thing to understand practically. How are you doing this? And then also, what are people getting out of it emotionally? So like the practical element and also like the internal element as well. Please, I want to hear from all of you too. Yeah, everybody, take a turn.
Yeah. So we're talking about sexuality itself. It's not like, sex and, the practical aspect of sex itself, but sexuality and what actually is, and in connection with God, what is the ideal for sexuality as a single person? How are you supposed to relate with your sexuality in terms of your values, in terms of that ideal that it's the blessing, the second blessing, I think it was. First is growth, right? And so sexuality is still around when you're growing. we are not we are not having like one button that turns off our sexuality, and then when we get blessed we can turn it on. It's there. So how can we relate to sexuality in a positive and healthy way that it was closer to what ideally God wanted? So this is what I mean by practical. Sexuality is energy. It's part of who we are. You are a guy, a man, or a woman because of your sexuality. So how can we honor that sexuality? How can we put into practice our values in connection with sexuality, right? So when we talk about sexual integrity, right, it's not only not having porn masturbation, struggles, but also even on the positive side, how can I develop again values for my sexuality? How can I have a positive and healthy relationship with my sexuality, preparing myself as a single person for the future relationship that I'm going to have? That's what I mean by practical, right? And even emotionally, there's a lot of negative concepts, connotations, and experiences around sexuality as single people. When we're growing, we are taught that we can't think of the opposite gender until we get blessed, right? And so sex has, sexuality, sex, everything, sexual organs, all of that has become something negative, something dangerous, something to be feared. And that brings a lot of negative emotions when we are talking about preparing for the blessing, right, for the marriage. So what we're doing is really healing that negative relationship that everyone has in one level or another, um, to their sexuality, right? And understanding that sexuality comes from God, right? And it's something beautiful, it's a gift that comes from God. And so, how can we have an actual nice and beautiful relationship with our sexuality that actually has something positive to it, that eventually is going to allow us to connect with our spouse and, bring life to our families. So, and we can start preparing from that as single people. We don't have to just ignore it, suppress it, and have negative relationships, and then out of nowhere think that we are going to be able to relate with it once we're blessed in a positive way. There's going to take some time, and a lot of people struggle with that change, right? When we are out of nowhere, we get blessed, and then, okay, now you can think of sex. But all of my life I thought of sex as something negative, and so that negativity comes into my blessing too. So we are trying to help that from the beginning, as you are preparing to even think of talking to a brother or a sister from your opposite gender.
Andy, you look like you have something to say. Say it, man. Say it.
Yeah, I mean, what Araceli shared is really on point and important. I thought the question, it hits almost personal, right? Because I come from the ballpark of people who, to that definition, belong to the broken people who struggled with sexuality and porn in the past. And even just talking from that point of view, I realized that, so because High Noon for a long time had the Ascend program, right, which was kind of still is the flagship, and it's the program that's been there for people who are struggling with sexuality or sexual addiction or habits, porn habits. And during recovery, what's a huge part for many of them, though, part of healing, part of recovery, and just the learning point is learning about what good sexuality looks like. And from such a person's perspective is that there have been so many unhealthy habits and concepts about sexuality that they get twisted and warped because we never had any healthy conversation with our parents, or we've been exposed way too early to sexuality at school or wherever in society, to be honest. And so a huge part in my personal recovery, and I see in many other people's recovery, is learning about what does good sexuality actually look like. Sexuality that's purpose is for intimacy's sake and closeness sake, right? Getting close to somebody else and using it to create that beautiful relationship, to honor and respect the other. And so that takes time to teach and to learn, right? It's not something that we usually learn over a weekend only, but over time, and stuff, beliefs that have been ingrained for many years already in most people's brains. And so naturally, it just takes unraveling, right? Like, where do they come from, and how can they be replaced with better concepts of sexuality? And there are so many couples, right, that we talk to, young couples, that are still dealing with the after effects of having had unhealthy beliefs about sexuality in their, not even their early years of in the couple, right, but like sometimes many years into their marriage, and what effects that has on how open they get to be with their spouse and how long it takes for them to be intimate, right, on an emotional level, and bring that into their married life. Yeah, so I think core is really offering a space where people can discuss what that looks like, good sexuality, and that heavenly culture in building intimacy with one spouse and preparing for that, right? So that's the point, preparing for that as singles, because like taking that energy somewhere, right? We get sexual awakening already in puberty, and so that needs to be taken somewhere, and so we learn it anyway somewhere in society. Many resources are dubious, right, and sketchy at best when we look at sexuality. So that's that environment, and I think it's something that it's like prevention, right? In the medical area, we don't talk about that as much. There's no preventative business really, unless you look at supplements, maybe, right? But the medicine cures, right? There's billion million industries in curing people of diseases after they got them, but not such a big thing in how do people just lead healthy lives and prevent getting sick in the first place. So I think core as that is a place where people can prevent problems.
And I just want to know how you guys do it. Like, how do you do it? Because there's a lot of generalities and I believe them, but I want to hear specifically, like, how do you guide people, or how are you doing this in a way that's ultimately productive? And how do you avoid all the fears that so many parents and leaders have, right? How are you guiding this whole process in a healthy way?
It's a very simple formula, I would say, actually. From the start, we were just super, um, we did not hold back. That we would just express sexuality in the way that your father would want us to. You know, your father was probably the most profound speaker on the topic of sexuality ever in human history, right? And it really does shock me that our movement does not emphasize his words on this topic as much, right? We often shove it under a rug or dilute it with so much water that you can't even taste the juiciness of what your father's trying to say, you know? Even his own translators would not even interpret what he had to say about sexuality. That goes to say something, that we live in a world that is buried under shadows and shame, right? And what I've seen is so many people join the core program with a lot of baggage. They come into the first call, you can tell they're nervous, they don't want to talk about sex at all. The first thing they see on the Hundake, like sex is like in every other sentence, the word sexuality comes up. They're kind of put on the spot to talk about it in their own personal life. And so it can be rather discomforting. But what I'm really seeing is true father's words and true parents' words about sexuality is almost all you need to have an open conversation about it, because they talk about it in such a clear, purposeful way, a way which is so spiritually pure. And so I've had experiences with brothers in my groups who, by week 2 or 3 even, they're already laughing and having fun together, just talking about sexuality in a pure way. They're almost surprised, like, wow, we can actually talk about this in this way. This is amazing. I've had brothers who are so excited to finally be able to have a platform to talk about sexuality, which is different from how they would do it in school with their friends or in the world of porn. Many of these people have been watching porn for years, and that really does something to your brain. It makes you see sexuality in a very vulgar and dirty way. And what we're really offering is just a very simple conversation. It's, what is the purpose of the blessing? What's the purpose of sex? What does your father have to say about it? So as you were saying, Andrew, like, you know, how do we do this? How do we guide these conversations? It's really that very simple. It's very simple. We just have true parents' words. We guide those conversations and we make sexuality something which is joyful to talk about. I really see a lot of purity coming out of these guys. It's almost like, you know, these people are in their mid-20s sometimes, nearly 30s. They all become children again in this program. I really feel that youthful energy of, they really want to look at sex in a very innocent way. And that's a very beautiful, pure way to look at it. That's what I've seen over the course of the last year, for sure.
Hey, if you happen to be a single person that wants to prepare well for marriage, for the matching, for the blessing, then my friend, we actually have a program just for you. It's completely free. You can join the core program at highnoon.org. We're going to take you through the stages to figure out, what does it mean to be a marriageable person? What does it mean to be ready? How do you actually prepare for marriage and the blessing? Check it out at highnoon.org. Join us in the program called Core. All right, see you there.
I guess I wanted to add, in practical terms, sisters have their own groups, you know, just with the sisters, and they have those conversations. We read The Core of the Universe, some excerpts from the book, and they have some questions already prepared from that book that they, you know, reflect about, you know, what is the purpose of, you know, sexuality, what is my relationship with sexuality, and they start thinking about how will my relationship with sexuality impact my future relationship in marriage, right? Or even with my own self, with my own self-worth and my emotions and how my actions are maybe, impacted by that. So they start reflecting on that. Also, the men have their own small groups with their other brothers. And then we have 2 webinars, 3 webinars where we are all together there. And sometimes we have separate gender conversations and sometimes we have them together, but it's always with us there guiding that question, asking questions that they can reflect on. Um, and then we have the WhatsApp group discussion chat that, again, we ask challenging questions around the matching, the blessing, the marriage, and their own relationship to the purpose of all of these things, right? And so the way that this is done is really about thinking about themselves in their own individual growth, how sexuality has an impact on all of that, and how my previous experiences with either positive or negative, healthy or not healthy, with sexuality, um, might, have an impact in my future relationship. And if my vision for my future marriage is this ideal that we all want, actually, that we all have in our minds, of having a really close connection with our spouse, that requires to be open, to be vulnerable, and, sexuality around that topic as well, then you have to start now, right? If you start now, it's the best way. You won't struggle as much in the future. I guess you could, ignore it until you can't, but then it's not really healthy. So it is really about understanding this ideal that true parents talked about sexuality, about, the second blessing, and how can we start taking steps to getting there in our daily lives, right? How can I honor the purpose of sexuality within myself and with others in my daily life? Am I looking at somebody else as an object when I look them at them? Am I looking at them for my own benefit, or am I, really looking to give something to this person? So, or even to ourselves. I talk to, in many groups, many sisters, sexuality, sex, these sexual organs were words that they were disgusted by. They were grossed out to even think about any of that. They were scared, and they were scared of the opposite gender as well, because they had this perspective that men are gross and stuff like that. And little by little throughout our conversations, they were able to understand that actually my sexual organ is precious. Life is going to come out of that, and my future relationship with my spouse, it's going to it's going to be impacted by how we connect, in our heavily intimacy relationship. So they were able to realize that they needed to honor them instead of fear them, instead of be scared by them. They needed to actually be grateful for them because came from God. And how can I connect my sexuality to God, right? So it really helped them to understand in their life of faith how actually sexuality has a place on our life of faith, on our future marriage relationship, the blessing. And it started to heal this idea that sexuality was negative, was bad, was awful, dangerous, or gross. And it started to become something that they were looking forward to in the future, once they got blessed, that they would be excited to eventually experience, and that they were happy to be able to prepare for right now as singles, right? So yeah, that's my answer.
Thank you. I'd love to hear stories about how this has impacted people, right? So this how many people have gone through the program? It's been around for a year, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's been growing, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quarter over
Yeah.
quarter, or cycle over cycle. So with all these people going through it, has the general reception been good? People having good experiences? What kind of things are they learning? Yeah, give me the scoop. We were talking more about like the process. Now let's talk about the people. How are the people? What are they getting out of it?
Yeah, and I think in general, all the cycles together, we definitely have more than 100 people that have joined in just a year, um, in different cycles. So people are interested in this program and they're really getting something from it, because there are some people who have joined 3 or 4 times even, and they keep coming back. Um, yeah, the people that join, they really appreciate the fact that we can talk about sexuality so openly. And we have quite a few testimonies, from people who just had a very different perspective on sex, before this program. And that comes from many things. That comes from the way that they grew up, even the way that we talk about sexuality in our community, which is not always the healthiest way. Sometimes we encourage people just to not think about it at all. That's biologically impossible for most teenagers or most young people, to not ever think about sexuality. I think you need to really guide people to think about it in a very pure way. And that's what people are really experiencing. They experience a new way of viewing sexuality. It's not that new. It's been talked about for years by true parents. We just haven't really emphasized it that much yet. And so many people are loving it. They're loving the chance to share openly with their brothers or their sisters, and in some case, together in the group chat as well. I really feel like, we call ourselves this is a marriage preparation program. One thing that's a very important aspect of the program is brothers learning how sisters view the blessing, in the group chat, and vice versa. There's been many discussion questions where it's like, what do you see in your ideal spouse? We have fun quiz questions, not quiz questions, we have fun test questions where we ask people, think about your ideal spouse. Everything internally is perfect, but they're disabled. Maybe they're in a wheelchair. Would you be able to love that kind of person? Right, really testing people's vision of what is the blessing to me? Is it a physical body that I'm getting blessed to, or is it a person, precious son or daughter of God? And I've been surprised to hear that many people said, yes, I would definitely get blessed to that person who's in a wheelchair if they have this characteristic. If they are an honest person, a person that loves true parents, who loves God, who is an owner of their sexuality. And I'm sitting there scratching my head going, what? Why are these people so mature? Like, that's amazing. That perspective is incredible. Like, they are so willing to love someone just because they view sexuality now in a more godly way. I don't think you can do that without that. If you didn't see sexuality as a godly thing, you just want it for your own self-pleasure. So of course you wouldn't get married to someone who's disabled, because they wouldn't be able to please you that well in bed, right? But that's not the purpose of the blessing. That's not the purpose of life. We're meant to be loving other people. We're meant to be living for the sake of others, living for the sake of your spouse. We have so many stories about blessed couples who only made it because they were able to love each other for who they are, not for who they want them to be. And I think that's really what the young people are experiencing here in this program, is understanding that I might have preferences for my spouse, but in the end of the day, I just have to love them as a child of God. And that only becomes possible if I view sexuality from a godly perspective.
We do have some written testimonies that I could read out, speaking from.
Please.
Yeah. So here's one of them. God-centered love is so important to living a high noon lifestyle, practicing the virtues and not hiding anything to your loved ones. I can be a person that is qualified for the blessing with the tools of the core program. From a male 33 years old. And we got another one. The blessing really is for everybody, and the strength and power you can gain from having these strong values and making these values you can say that you have been working towards and seeing progress in. The more you better yourself in these areas, the better potential your marriage will be successful. From a sister, 22 years old. And maybe, let's go with this one. I felt like the time I had during the program had impacted me in daily life. I could reach into my own heart to open up to my father about the issues I had with sexual desires. That was a big roadblock in the matching process. From a brother, 33 years old. And High Noon is not just for people who are labeled for having problems or are struggling. This program is for people who want to connect and create life of faith friends, a place where you can feel God grace, gratitude, forgiveness, accountability, and power. Male, 22 years old. There are a few more.
I
Yeah.
can read one last one. Just a short one. This girl that said, she's 21 years old. She said, I finally know how important my sexuality is in the truest sense, how important I am, and how important it is how I see and treat my brothers and sisters, all in a relationship to purity of mind and body. It seems simple, but there is so much more to understand truly. So I hope to continue learning through rereading the Heinen book and keeping in touch with my mentor. That was it. Short one.
So, what is your experience of, like, do you have any inspiring stories of somebody's life changing or getting clear about the blessing, or even going to the blessing since starting this program? Do you have any anecdotal stories that you'd like to share?
Yeah, we have a couple actually. I want to share a story that Samara sent me. She wasn't able to join the podcast today, but she's actually been a big part of the core program from the very beginning and is the reason why sisters are having a good experience, on core. She's been supporting them for a whole year. So yeah, she was saying, this is what she wrote. There was a sister who joined her program, actually many sisters that joined her group, who she realized they had all experienced some sort of sexual abuse in their past, whether that is small things like being catcalled on the street or being objectified by a man, or literally to the extent of being raped. Even we've had experiences where we have people that have experienced all kinds of serious sexual trauma, which is a very heartbreaking thing to experience in this program, where we're trying to advocate for this really pure godly form of the blessing. So that's a very heartbreaking thing to observe. But Samara here, she was talking about one sister who had a very negative perspective about sexuality because of this, because of her trauma from being sexually abused, and really had this spiritual block when it came to the blessing, like really not feeling like she was worthy, really feeling like her own sexual organs was dirty and that she couldn't be a valuable, member of this community, couldn't receive the blessing. But through this program, through understanding the God-given value of our sexual organs, our sexuality, this sister in particular was really able to go through a lot of healing. She reached out to her parents. She was able to connect really well with them and open up everything and receive a lot of healing from her mentoring, from her support in her group. She really, learned a lot. And now this person has a completely different perspective on sexuality. They're a very positive person. They are preparing well for the blessing, and they are also a facilitator for core now. So it's incredible to see these kind of stories. Also on the brother side, we had a brother who was really struggling with his sexuality, was not clear on his own, not really clear on the blessing and is he worthy for the blessing? We have a lot of people who had fallen, before and had to take special grace. And so those people in particular feel extra shame when it comes to the idea of the blessing because they know they haven't kept their purity. And some of them, it's so easy for them to give up, right? But this brother in particular, I was able to connect with him in Korea, and he said, I really want to get blessed. I want to commit my life to this ideal. And he worked on himself. He joined a group a couple of times. He learned as much as he could. He took the Ascend program course as well to cleanse his sexuality. But in the core program, really learned the meaning of the blessing. This guy is now matched. Like, it was an incredible story in just 1 year of this person taking his life seriously and really pursuing the blessing. So yeah, we have many stories about this. Andi, Araceli, do you have any other stories we can share like that?
Well, yeah, actually, very similar to the one that you shared just now, but a sister, she participated once and then she became a facilitator, and I had more connection with her as a facilitator. And she realized through this program that she had been struggling with her sexual integrity before, right? And she had done some work, and she thought all has been, resolved. But when focusing on the blessing, focusing on preparing for marriage, for the blessing, and becoming a facilitator, she realized, actually I am struggling, and I know I want to work on this, because I want to, prepare myself, and I want to have this purity and mindset, and have in sexual integrity. And she was able to understand that, even if you struggle once a year, once a month, whatever the frequency of your struggles are, there is something there that needs to be healed, right? And she felt like she really needed to, work on her sexual integrity, and joined Ascent. And she's, working on herself in Ascent, but she's also helping other sisters in Core, where she's still facilitating. And she's putting herself out there to get matched and, all of that. But just really the fact that she felt like she could take responsibility for herself, and also supporting other sisters in their own journey for growth. She, was a participant, and then became a facilitator, and has been helping so much. And actually, both sisters that we have been sharing their testimony right now, they have shared their testimony. So you'll be able to hear it more in detail very soon once we post them. But like them, uh, their change was to really understand that, sexuality is something, positive, something godly, heavenly. And that really transformed their faith, their um, values, and their relationship with their faith was really transformed by realizing, actually sexuality is part of something positive, and I should, be able to see that. And practicing that through their programs as participants, and then as facilitators, really help them to heal these negative self-worth doubts that they had on getting matched, on getting, the blessing, getting married. And now they're really working on it in a very positive way, and really looking forward to it, really, with hope. And yeah, that's really, a lot of the participants have this same experience of feeling very negative about it, and then having this transformation where then they feel like, actually I'm worth it. I can love myself, I can love other brothers and sisters, for who they are, as brothers and sisters, as daughters and sons of God. And and I can, eventually find a person that I can, be matched, be blessed with. And it's really beautiful to see.
You don't want to throw anything in the fire there, Andy, or you want to move on?
I think we can move on. I mean, the ones I had in mind have already been mentioned.
Okay. I guess, yeah, before we go, I wanted to have a sense of where this is all heading. Like, what is the future? What is the evolution of this program? Because it started out as a bit of an experiment, kind of like Hunduke, which is very hit or miss. Hunduke is like, it depends on what state you're in, not geographically, but mentally, emotionally. It's very easy for Hunduke to not land because you're just listening to the words and you're not really in a place to feel it, right? It went from that to groups sharing to this chat situation where you have questions and people unpacking all sorts of stuff together collectively. So have you thought about what this is turning into, what's morphing into, or a vision that you might have for the future of how this might grow or expand in some way?
Yeah, I mean, we just want to continue that Core is a program and a safe space for people to experience sexuality, not to learn about sexuality, heavenly sexuality, and prepare for that in marriage. So that's one thing, a safe space where people can discuss. And so for Core to be a program that's kind of supplementary in our movement, because we do have matching and blessing workshops, right? And I just had somebody bring it up to me. It's like, I reached a participant who I reached out to, hey, do you want to participate in Core? I said, oh, I already participated in the matching and blessing workshops in my country, so what's the difference if I join this, right? Because they're not going to get a certificate for this. and it's not going to be on the checklist of requirements to go to the blessing at the moment. But so the vision for core in this sense is that this is really a supplementary place where people who are serious about preparing the best they can to become a marriageable person can come to, like the CrossFitters of becoming a marriageable person. Just jumping on that sports analogy, who are like, no, I'm not satisfied with my gym membership, but I want to like give it the best and show up the best possible way when it comes to marriage, when it comes to the blessing. And so I'll take that resource and I'll put myself out there in groups where I can discuss with other people and I can learn new concepts that prepare me more in depth for marriage and the blessing. So that's where we'd like to take it for people.
Got it. So how can people connect with this program, with understanding more information? If they have any questions, who should they connect to, or what should they do?
Yeah, well, if you go to highnoon.org and look at programs core, you'll see that you can reach out to Andi if you're a brother, or Araceli if you're a sister, but any of the staff members as well. My contacts, Benji's contact, he's working on the promotion side. We have lots of people who are really interested in nurturing their blessing journey. That's what, as Andi was saying, this is really what core is for. It's not, to slap a certificate in their hands and go, you are now certified to go get blessed. It's really to nurture their experience. So yeah, please contact if you're interested in that.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for unpacking this. I learned a lot. I haven't taken the course myself. It's just something that has grown in a place where I don't often dwell. So yeah, everybody, this is what Uncle Dave was talking about a long time ago is starting to actually happen, which is to be cradle to grave, experience. High Noon is we have School of Love to help parents talk to their kids. Now we have how to prepare well for the blessing, how to deal with problems if they arise through Ascend, and then also Radiant, which I guess we can unpack later. That program, which is what happens after the blessing. How do you maintain a healthy trajectory of intimacy in your life? So yeah, thank you guys so much for explaining, but also thank you so much for pioneering this thing, which is continual care. Because I don't want to say any specifics, but I've had some conversations and there's really nothing in terms of ongoing care for somebody who's preparing for the blessing unless they're extremely proactive of their own volition. But this is a program that they can plug into and inherit like an entire community to help them not feel like they're all alone in this. Yeah. So thank you guys for creating that safe space, as Andi said.
It's our mission statement for this to become the #1 marriage preparation program in the world at some point. At one day when we're 85, this will be our dream come true. So yeah, it's true. It's true, Andi. We want to really help people with their blessing journey. That's what's really important to us. And yeah, we have so much love for all of our participants who join.
Well, if you're 85, I might be in spirit world, so we can take that goal and turn it into cosmos. And we can train people in the spirit world. I don't mind. I'll volunteer, but I'm going to have a lot of stuff going on in spirit world. A very active social life. Andi, were you going to say something before we go?
Not really. I was just, by the time you're there, maybe we're able to communicate with spirits in the spirit world, so we can hire you as a spirit world facilitator.
Yeah, I'll go back and forth. Yeah.
We'll
Sure.
probably do 10 groups in one day.
Yeah. No problem.
Right. There's no time and space.
True. I don't understand any of that stuff. How are there workshops if there's no time and space? Anyway, regardless, we're going to be plugging away. We're going to be making this. We hope that you can be a part of it in some way, shape, or form. And I want to mention one last thing is that this all emanated from somebody's feeling, in particular David Hewish is feeling like, I wish other people could feel how I feel. I wish something could exist to help people like me. And we worked with him to help to create this. And through that, Benji, through that, Araceli, Samara, Andi, have all contributed to make this a reality, this core program a reality. But if you're also stricken by a desire, this thing needs to exist. When I was a pastor, I had a lot of people come up to me like, hey, I just had this really strong feeling. You need to create this thing. And I was always like, you're misunderstanding how this whole thing works. God gave that to you. I might be able to help you, but you're not it's hot potato this to me. Like, that's not my thing. That's your thing. So David took that inspiration and worked with the team to help unearth it and to mold it and to shape it into what it is. And we're happy to co-create with you, but don't let these inspirations go to waste. God's giving you something. And so we're happy to, High Noon needs to grow, and it's not going to be through our genius ideas. It's going to be through a co-creation process. That's how the true unified body, the collective, works. So thank you, David, for that, for following your instinct, for speaking out, and thank you all for contributing. I'm going to go. You're going to go. Thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
We hope to see the participants soon. We are closing registration soon, so hop on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. See you.
Bye.
Thank you.
That's enough.
Bye.
Hey, did you know that our team wants to do more events? Well, if you want to bring the High Noon message to your community or group, then let us know and we'll try to work something out. There's a simple application that you can fill out right now at highnoon.org/invite. And one of our team members will get back to you to see what's possible. That's highnoon.org/invite. All right, see you in the next episode.